I think we're getting close here. We got a pretty good critical mass, so we can kick this off. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. I am Charlie Bathgate. I'm a managing partner at Saying Lucci and Wall Street Jesus, and I am joined here by the one and only Ronchero Friedman. Even
What's
though it
up?
says Saying Lucci on his handle on his screen, he is not saying Lucci. And we are here today to talk about resistance. This is the first webinar in our series, which is a 5-part series. And we're talking about the concept of resistance in trading, which is a psychological concept. The reason that we are here talking about this is because, well, let's start with this. There are 3 things that people come to us with when they want to learn how to trade, when they come to our services and they come to our course, when they come to people like Ronchero to learn, what he does and how he does it. The first is that they don't feel like they have any source of edge in terms of trading. They don't feel like they can read the markets. They don't have any gauge on how to predict where things are going, how to time their entries and exits. They've been using chart patterns and they feel like that's not sufficient. So that's where tape reading and flow trading comes in. The second is that they feel like they really don't understand options. They don't understand all the various ways that you can use them on different time frames. They're intimidated by them. The Greeks are intimidating. So they come to us to learn options. And then the third one, which is the biggest one, probably the most common, is trading psychology. Traders come to us because they feel like they can't get a handle on their emotions. They feel like their emotions are running the show rather than objectively what they need to do and how to do it. And so they feel like their emotions are really behind the driver's seat, and they're like, I know there's no way I can get there, get to where I want to go, unless I get control of this. So trading psychology is definitely the third thing, and probably the biggest and the most common thing that people come to us and really want help with. And that's part of why we're here. Resistance, the concept of resistance. What I'm talking about is really any force within your mind, within our minds, that's stopping us from doing what we want to do and what we know we need to do. And everyone in every facet of their lives, whether you're a trader, no matter what your profession is, entrepreneur, creative, writer, artist, whatever it is you're doing, you experience some form of resistance. That can be self-doubt, procrastination, a fear of failure, self-sabotage, something that's stopping you from avoiding doing the work and showing up every single day. For traders, I think resistance looks, it can look like not learning the skill sets that you want to learn. Tape reading is a good example of this. I think a lot of people feel intimidated by tape reading, or they say, this is actually pretty complex. I don't think I can really do this. They start telling themselves a lot of reasons, undercutting why they think, undercutting their confidence they'll be able to do something that could be as valuable to them as tape reading. It could be them saying, I'm avoiding the resistance could look like avoiding emotions, right? So avoiding doing the work to generate self-awareness and doing the introspective work to be able to say, okay, I understand the emotions that are driving me right now. I understand what's causing me to engage in the behavior that I'm engaging in, and I know what I'm gonna find out what I need to do in order to change that. So that's part of what brings us to Ronch. And one of the reasons I want to start this series off with Ronchero is because, and Ronch, not to blow some smoke up your ass here, so like put, earmuffs or something. But I think Ronch is a incredible example of a professional. And I say that in the sense that he shows up and does what he needs to do every single day. And he's been doing that for a long time in his trading career. And that's one of the reasons why, and we're going to get into his story here in a second, but it's one of the reasons why he's been able to make such incremental, consistent progress in his growth as a trader, which has resulted in him accruing ridiculous skill sets and understanding of the market and experience. So Ronch, there are probably some people who are in here who don't know who you are and don't know what your background is. So can you give like a quick, 2-minute spiel on just like your trading background, and then we can go from there.
Sure. I've been trading for a long time, probably close to 30 years now, and my journey
Uh-oh, lost you for a sec, Launch.
Kind of started out a long time ago with Oldie Discount, and Oldie Discount was bought by H&R Block, and the story goes on. But I got my start there, and I quickly realized that as a broker, the money that you're making is for the firm. They're making money off of the spreads between the bid and the ask. They're making their money off of the commissions that you generate, and they're graciously giving you a piece of the commission. So what I figured out was that's not where the money gets made. The money gets made by actually being someone who's placing the trades, the buying and the selling. And I had a buddy who placed a trade on Micron of all things, and he turned, I think it was 4 or 5 grand into 75 or $78,000 overnight. It was an earnings play. I'd never seen anything like it. I didn't know what options were, and all of a sudden, I was pretty much hooked like a crack addict. So
lightning struck. Yeah.
That was it. I was like, oh man, you can turn 5 grand into 75 grand in 24 hours. That was absolutely insane to me. And that's where the journey started. But for the most part, learning how to trade those options was really just feeling around in the dark for such a long time. I had so many ups and downs because I really didn't have an understanding of what I was doing. I didn't know. I mean, I really had no idea how they were priced. I had no idea how the bid and asks worked. I had no idea how, what rights were. I didn't understand what different strategies were. All I knew was that I could buy a put or a call and I could make a ridiculous amount of money. And I did, and then I lost a ridiculous amount of money. So I went through all of these different gyrations, and I didn't know what I didn't know until I found some people to help me figure out what the details were, because the details are very important.
Right. Okay. So that's sort of like almost like the professional resume. And now you've been trading on your own accounts for, I mean, I guess in the size that you're trading in right now, 6-7 figure trading, how long has that been going on for?
So it's where it really got better for me was after I had gotten divorced about like 11 years ago now. So it took me at post-divorce, it took me a good 5 years to get back on my feet and then really kind of ramp back up. And where my trading really got better was taking the skills that I had and combining them with tape. It took me until I got here and learned how to use tape to apply it with all of the other skills that I have that really made a big difference in how I trade and what my performance became and what it is now.
Right. And now you're teaching this stuff, which we'll get into in a bit. But okay, so then we were doing a little prep yesterday, and we were talking about, I was asking Ronch, like, okay, when have you experienced resistance? Like when, and let's like go kind of back in your past and just talk about how you've been affected by challenges in your life and how you've been motivated. And I mean, all of this psychological stuff, a lot of it originates in our experiences when we were younger, in our childhoods, right? And Ronch, you were telling me a story about when you were younger, you were like kind of undersized on your sports teams, right? Can you talk a little bit about just that?
Yeah,
and how that
I was always, I grew up playing ice hockey and lacrosse on the East Coast, and I was always the smallest one on the team, and I was always the guy that was kind of, the last one picked, who's the, the little guy can't play. So, and comparatively, like they're, huge guys that I would play ice hockey and lacrosse with, guys that are, like 6'2" to 6'6", and I'm out there running around at 5'9", and everybody's telling me, hey, you're not cut out for this. You can't do this. And I don't know what it was inside of me, but whatever it was inside of me, when somebody says to me, you can't do something, just triggers me. And I don't know what it is, but it triggers me to prove them wrong. So that's kind of what the drive has been ever since I can remember, as as growing up playing those sports.
Right. And you, I mean, some of this came from your dad too, right? Your relationship with him.
Yeah, so and not to pick on him because he loves me and he wants me to do well, but there's always like a father-son conflict, and that was kind of like it was like, hey, regardless of what it is that you do, you could have done this better. Or even if, as I became an expert in a lot of things over the course of my life, the stories that I would give, I would still always hear the feedback of, well, if it were me, I would have done it this way. So that's always been one of those things that has kind of been, that pokes at me like, hey, it's still a little bit of a poke, like, hey, you still can't do something, you're still not competent, or
Whoops. I think we lost you for a sec. Launch. Give us 1 second here, guys. Let Ronch come back in here. Whoops. All right, we got you back now. Ronch, say something.
you hear?
Okay. Yeah, got you. I think you were cutting off sort of at the tail end of saying, when someone tells you you can't do something, that really is what just pushes you to say, basically, fuck you, I can do it and move
Pretty
forward.
much. Yep. Yeah. It fuels me for sure.
Right. Okay. And so this is something that Lucci and I have actually been talking about a good bit, and that Ronch, we talked about a little bit yesterday. And this is a psychological principle that we have been wanting to communicate in this kind of educational context. So this and kind of demonstrate the advantages of it through, I think, Ronch's kind of incremental progress in his career. And this concept that I want to talk about is the idea, and this is well studied and well established in psychological research, and it's that excitement and anxiety manifest in the same ways for people physiologically, right? So when you are going into an experience and you start thinking about, let's say you're giving a talk, a public speaking, right? One of the things that people are most commonly afraid of. The symptoms that you want to call it, the physiological expressions of that anxiety, of that event, the anticipation of that event, are the same whether you're anxious about it or whether you're excited about it, right? The body basically feels anxiety and excitement in the same way. So the difference between why we feel something, why we're anxious about something versus why we're excited about something, is all about how we frame it, right? It's all about the story that we tell ourselves. That's all about how we frame it. And what that gives us is the ability to reframe anxiety. And one of the reasons that I'm bringing this up is because in the feedback that we get from people who are new traders, people who have gone through the master course and who are talking about how they developed as a result of it, people who've been with us for years and who are saying, hey, this is what I'm still working on. This is still part of my process. Lucci talks about this all the time as well. Anxiety is something that shuts down our decision-making processes and shuts down our capacity to really make fluid, quick decisions, especially the kind of decisions that you need to make in a trading context. It's cognitively draining. So one of the things that traders face is decision fatigue, right? You guys are out there from market open to market close. Often you're just making hundreds, sometimes thousands of decisions every single day. Should I pull the trigger on this? No. Do I need to look at this ticker? Yes. You're constantly making these decisions. You need all like the cognitive firepower that you can get. And anxiety is something that is going to drain that from you, right? And so it's very important for us to identify the ways that you guys can reframe any kind of anxiety and flip it into excitement. And just to even understand that's possible. And I think it's really helpful to look at somebody who does that and who has done that on such a consistent basis, like Ronchero. And so one of the things, Ronch, that I was so fascinated about as we've talked about your background and how you've gotten to where you are, is that just as you said earlier, you kind of started feeling around in the dark. You had basically no idea what you were doing. And so can you walk us through a little bit of your evolution of, you essentially, you can start with when you first came in, where you were at when you came into the steam room, when you first found Wall Street Jesus and saying Lucci. If you can start there and then kind of go through the iteration of how you improved from there. Ron, I think we lost audio. You hear me? Sorry guys, little technical difficulties here. Ron, you there? Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Okay, got you back.
Sorry, don't know what's happening there.
No worries. So did you get to hear the prompt, the question?
I didn't. You broke up.
Okay. So what I was saying is I would like to kind of walk everybody through what your incremental progress was, what your journey was from right before you got to the steam room, like where you were at, and then how you moved through all of the information, all the different things that you learned once you hit the steam room.
So about 11 years ago, I found a mentor who was a former market maker, and I needed and I wanted a solution to just the ups and downs of where I was with options trading. And I think so many people hit a point where they feel like, hey, I've got X number of dollars, and I think the biggest mistake is people want to hit that home run, right? Like, how am I going to turn 5 grand into 75, right? So people try to become so precise about, okay, this is the spot where I want to buy. And then they buy, and what happens is the stock doesn't go up right away, or the stock moves against them, and all of a sudden you're in this situation where your expectation was, oh man, I was supposed to be on track to make 75 grand, and now I'm going to lose half of my 5. Like, I gotta cut this trade loose. I think a lot of people really struggle with that. I know I did. I found a market maker who was a mentor to me and who taught me the strategy that I teach in the room, which is what I refer to as trading the post, which is the same thing as stock replacement. So what we're doing is we're looking at a long-term position, and then how do we trade around that long-term position to, number one, not only pay for the position that we bought, but number two, to continue to generate income, and how do we protect it? So I spent a long time learning the details from the ground up of that strategy. And that's what gave me the ability to claw my way back out of the hole more with better probability. So I had much better probability, but what I was lacking that I didn't know I was lacking was tape skills. I had heard about reading tape, and I had heard about level 2, and I really didn't understand either one of them. I was basically just trading off of moving averages. And then when I got to the steam room, for me, the steam room, I was completely enamored and allured by, wow, look at all this flow, and look at these people coming in and buying these options on, speculating on whatever it might be, and seeing a lot of people and a lot of these trades work out. So I started chasing a lot of stuff, and it worked well at first, but then it didn't. And you started to put together 2 and 2. It was like, well, just because somebody comes in and sweeps calls on something doesn't necessarily mean that that's not protection for them. Or how do I know that they didn't take the other side of that trade and write that against, common, or whatever the case may be. So I really, it took me a while to figure out the nuance and the difference between Jesus and Lucci, and what Lucci teaches to enhance what Jesus talks about every day. So it took a long time for me to get to that point. And when I finally did and got into the master class and started learning tape, I went in there, I did well, but what I realized was that every time I kept coming back for another master course, there was something that I had missed the time before that I didn't know that I had missed. So I wasn't putting up a hand to say, I'm not going to learn that. It was more of a, oh, you dumb shit, how did you miss that? So, for me, it was more a journey of, oh, wow, look at all these things that I can continue to add to what I've already learned from the past. So that's right. Where that's how I got to where I'm at now. It was not simple. It was not easy. It was not overnight. It took 25 years to become an overnight success. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. There's nothing easy about it.
But that, like, I want to zoom in on that kind of moment that you experience. It sounds like every single day of looking down the barrel of something new that you had to learn, so realizing like that there's so much that you didn't know, and the feeling that you had when you were confronting that, which the language you just used is excitement, right?
Yeah, for sure. And
Right.
you can sense it in the tone of my voice, and more of it is so much of trading too for me. Even if I have like I can have a big day, a big profit day, and still kind of have like a well, that was okay type of attitude. And I can have a day where I don't make as much money, but because I've executed so well, I'm just stoked because I executed so well on that particular
Right.
day. If if
Right.
that makes any sense. So learning those things in tape for me when I learn something new, I'm excited about it because it is something that I didn't know before. And when I discover something, it's like, well, our business is a business of creating subterfuge and language that becomes confusing and off-putting, and people don't want to learn what those things mean. And
Right.
our industry does that on purpose to keep you away, right?
Yeah.
So and that's what I mean. It takes such a long time to sift through all of the shit to get down to what you need to get to. You have to sift through so much to get down to it. So um, I don't know if I may have gone ADD there and tailed off. So I don't know if I answered your
No.
question completely or
No,
not.
no, I mean, you're actually hitting on the next point that I wanted to make. And because getting to know you and everyone in the room who knows you, I think would attest to this, all your students would say that you embody the balance between being positive. You're a generally positive person. That's how I experience you every single time we interact. But you're also very real. You're not out there blowing smoke up anybody else's ass or your own ass. I mean, yesterday you got back from vacation in Costa Rica, and we hop on a call, and I'm asking you how you're doing, and you're like, I'm pissed off because I lost. You were just getting back in the swing of things. You're trading super small size. You're like, I lost $250, and it feels shitty. And I think the reason that you don't resist negative emotions like that, I think one of the reasons why you don't resist negative emotions like that, and that you can just feel them and then like spin them and use them to positively propel you forward, is because you do cultivate so much positivity and resilience in the rest of your life outside of your trading, right? And you have this endless curiosity towards your trading. I mean, and talking to you, and this gets into the things you do outside of the markets as well. I mean, every time I talk to you, you're talking about things you're doing with your friends. You're talking about things, your life with your wife. You're talking about your kids. Like you are a very balanced person, and I'm curious if you think that that helps propel you forward in terms of just like this insatiable curiosity.
I would say that's true. And when I'm balanced until I'm not, and when I'm not balanced, then it's like the cheese slides off the cracker, right? Like then there's some moments and times where you're super frustrated and you just keep fighting your way through. And
Right.
that kind of goes back to, again, like when I was a kid. Like when I was a kid, growing up on the East Coast, my aunt used to work in the front office for the New York Rangers, and there's an ex-Ranger that any hockey fan will recognize. His name is Rod Jobert. And when I was a little kid, he wrote me a letter, and that letter said, when people are telling you can't do something, and when you feel like you've given everything that you have to give, you reach down and you find a little bit more. And like that stuck with me for a long time. Obviously, I'm recounting it today. It stuck with me, for this far in my life. But you always, for me, if I can blow that stuff out of what's happening in my life, I can come back and center again. So it is important, in my opinion, to keep all those other things going so that you have good mental capacity to jump in here and try and fight this fight every single day, because it's not easy.
Right. And I think that's something that I see a lot in the room. We see a lot in just the general trading community. There is this mentality amongst a lot of traders that if they kick the shit out of themselves all the time, that's equivalent of keeping themselves honest and keeping themselves on point. And if you're in the room, in the trading the post room, or in the steam room, you often see people talking about their trades, and they're framing it in language that is essentially like shame. It's, I saw this, I should have done this, but I got shaken out by this, and I'm pissed about this, and it's just like this constantly heaping negative emotion on top of themselves. And the reality is that trading is difficult enough as it is. Like the markets are going to kick your ass. You don't need to add any additional, you don't need to give them any further help. And I think this is something that Ronch really embodies. I think that's something that Lucci has really turned the corner on, especially in the past couple of years, and that he talks about a lot, especially talks about in the master course, like cultivating that sense of positivity doesn't mean that you're just lying to yourself. It doesn't mean that it's all, rainbows and butterflies all the time, even though your P&L is taking hits. It actually means that you're able to sit with negative emotions more readily, and that you're able to process those things because you're not so beaten down that you feel like you can't really take anymore, or that you can't, that you're not worthy of confronting something that is so challenging. So I think that's another thing that is important to kind of take away, and for people to zoom in on with this in this conversation that we're having with Ronch. And guys, feel free to ask questions too. We're going to get to the Q&A section of this in a second, and I'm sure people have some questions for Ronch about his journey and the mental side of things. I do want to give a second. So Ronch is a guest educator for the Saying Lucci Master Course. Our next session starts on December 9th. Live session starts on December 9th. And so if you guys want in on learning directly from Ronch and his pilot program, which we're currently running right now, which is only available to Master Course students, you can sign up for the Master Course. That's the only way to get access to this man. And we want to give you, Ronch, do you want to go through and give a little bit of a taste of the trade that you're in right now in the post, or one that you just took off recently? Like, what's the best way to give them an idea of what you know?
Yeah, that's fine. And this is, please take this with a grain of salt, because I don't want to come in here and hype it up like, oh my God, look at these crazy returns that we have, and we're doing so well, and we're kicking ass and taking names.
What are you talking about? That's the name of the, what do you think is what we're doing right here? Don't say that.
I mean, the reality of it is that it's a process that we go through, and the process that we go through is we're identifying opportunities on out of favor names that are high quality and that have been beaten up. And the most recent example where, we hit an absolute home run is Biogen. And Biogen had the crap knocked out of it. They had a bad result from an Alzheimer's trial. The stock got just completely decimated, and I started keeping track of it. And we recognized some opportunities, some signs that, hey, this could be an area where it's bottoming out, where it's trading in a channel. We have an opportunity to take a long-term approach to this. And while we do the long-term approach in between until it delivers news again that things are back on track, we have a way to make money on the in-between. And that goes back to the trading the post. So what we're doing is we're buying a longer-term option or leap, and then in between we're writing against that leap. If we have opportunities to write condors at any specific point in time, we'll do that. If we have opportunities to play short-term puts and calls, and what we're basically doing is we're becoming experts in just one or two names. And we were in Biogen for probably 7 or 8 months, and then finally with this last earnings report, not only did they beat, but they came out with phenomenal guidance and what the future was. And then it really got hyped on CNBC about how this is the trade that everybody missed. Well, we didn't miss it. we were in it, and when we made money all the way up to the point to where they made the announcement. When they made the announcement, the stock popped 90 points. 90 points changes lives. That's what I mean? So that's it was a phenomenal trade. We're in another one right now. We have one that we missed that, quite honestly, I was not as aggressive on, and perhaps should have been, and that was Align. We definitely nailed Align. And then we have one that we're going with right now, but I'll hold it back because you can't give it all away for free.
You gotta pay for that. You gotta pay for that action.
Exactly,
And so,
exactly.
and you're kind of stalking these names. I mean, like what for you when you have like your biggest trades, because you're scalping in and out, just like you said, you're scalping and swing trading and whatnot out in and out of these names as you accrue these larger positions. But in terms of the time horizon for some of your bigger trades, what are you looking at there? Are we talking 2 months? Are we talking 6 months?
Well, I think Biogen's a great example. Biogen was a what 7 or 8 month trade with a huge end result payoff, and in that time frame, we paid off the cost of the leap. So we basically had a free trade, plus we were profitable going into that earnings report. We didn't need protection because we were completely paid for, right? So we were happy to let it go. And when it came out and ripped 90 points, I think what we put in the beginning, the average cost of my leap was like 18, and then at the time of before their earnings, with all of the activity that I had had over that period of time and the roll up that I had, I mean, I was already plus 9 or 10 points on it. So I was plus 9 on it. So it was completely paid for. So it was the 18 plus the 9 plus the 90 point pop where we got to roll up. And I mean, we scalped Biogen today. We had a great fade on it. So it's not necessarily just about what is the time frame for something to happen. It happens when it happens. So, the
Right.
Align, I thought the Align would actually drag out longer than it did. The Align only took a quarter to recover. So that's 3 months. In the move on Align, also same thing. I mean, percentage wise, if you were in that trade, the return on it is probably 250 to 300%. I mean, the Biogen was a home run. I mean, I even gone back to look at percentage wise what the gain is on it, but it's
Right.
massive. And part of the problem of why I don't like to give those types of numbers is because I mean they're not believable to people. So
Right.
you know what I mean? So I don't go out there and hype it and pump it that way.
Right. We try and keep it substance over sizzle here, but yeah, want to give people a taste of kind of what is it you do and the scale of what you're pulling off. And I just think it's super important to reiterate that for everybody here that Raunch was, I mean, when you rebuilt your account, did you restart it with 2 grand or was it 5 grand? I don't
5.
remember.
It
Five.
took me years to build up to 5 grand again because
Yeah.
I had blown out twice prior and went through a divorce, and I was living in a house with kids half my age in a room above a garage. I mean, I did that for 3 years. It was
Right.
not comfortable.
Right.
Yeah,
He's not comfortable, and he didn't know, and he didn't know a lot of what he even didn't know, right?
true.
But you were pushing forward. You just relentlessly pushed forward, and I think what facilitated you being able to do that, what facilitated you being able to move past points of resistance that would really have stymied other people and stop them in their tracks, is a lot of what we talked about today, and it's that inherent perspective of being able to frame the unknown, reframe the anxiety that could come from looking at the unknown into excitement. And that is such a core concept. It sounds so simple and borderline cliche, but it's the kind of thing that if you can do it, it will legitimately change your life. And that's one of the things actually, so in the next part of this series on Thursday, I'm very excited. We're going to be bringing on a good friend of mine who's also a professional trader and who has 30 years of meditation experience and as a meditation instructor. His name's Chris Caddy. Chris Caddy, I think Chris Caddy. He'll correct me on Thursday. And he's going to give really specific techniques about how to do this, right? So it's one thing to say, okay, I know I need to reframe, how I think about my, my anxious thoughts and reframe them into a more exciting sort of framework. It's another thing to actually have specific skill sets and means to do that. So that's what we're going to be talking about on Thursday. I'm sure that people have questions for Raunch in here. So feel free to just type them into the questions bar, and we will get them answered. We got time for a couple of them in here. A couple people have also asked, how to learn more about this, how to get access to the master course and stuff. We created something that we call the 3LT playbook, which I will type into the chat that everybody should go check out. It's www.3ltplaybook.com. I think that gives a very good flavor of what saying Lucci is all about and things you can learn from Lucci in the master course. And within that, you can get access to the steepest discount that we have on the master course, which starts on December 9th. The next live session starts on December 9th. So we very much encourage you to check that out. We also have a little bit of a bonus for anybody that signs up now, as opposed to waiting until December 8th, because traders procrastinate, and we know that 90% of you are going to do that anyways, even though you want to sign up. So if you are ready to sign up, definitely shoot me an email, charlie@sayinglucci.com, or just go to 3ltplaybook.com and sign up, and you can get a nice bonus. So I'm going to drop this link in here for you guys in the chat, 3ltplaybook.com. And let's answer some questions. From Norse, are there any questions you ask yourself or mental exercises you perform before trade or trading day in order to put yourself in the right mindset?
I watch Sports Center before the market opens. For real.
That's awesome.
I've got, I put on some, I honestly, that's what I do. I get a cup of coffee. I watch some Sports Center. It just lets me relax. And, CNBC drives me crazy. Like I can't just like dial in and say, okay, we need to get Bloomberg on and we need to get CNBC on. It's just like that kind of stuff just gets me more amped up and biased before I start trading. So I watch a little bit of Sports Center. I have some coffee. I let the dog out. I feed the dog, and I'm typically the first one up in the house, and it's a really quiet, peaceful time. So there's not a lot of meditation or anything that I need to do, because it's already there in my environment. Exactly. Yeah. That's what that is. So that is my prep time. And then, I go through it with you guys in my class about, hey, here's what I look at every morning before I decide that I'm going to make trades, and if there are any traps that I need to know about and what time certain announcements could be made. We cover that, and I look at that. I look at those calendars a few minutes before the open, but outside of that's just kind of my mental prep for the morning.
Got you. Okay. We got a question from Hamza. Was learning how to read the tape what helped you distinguish between calls and puts that were bets versus the ones that were protection?
Reading the tape was, so in my class, the strategy that I teach, I use a combination of technical analysis, and it's very, very simple. Any of the guys that are in my class, that are in my room, will tell you that the technical analysis that I use is very simple, very straightforward. I use the technical analysis as an area and a trigger point to look at the change in tape to help us define direction. And that direction helps us take a look at, should I be buying puts or should I be buying calls, or is there a different strategy that I should be using at that particular moment in time, regardless of where things are at. So the tape doesn't help me distinguish between puts or calls. It helps me distinguish between direction and the strength of that direction.
Gotcha. Hamza, I hope that answers your question. We got another one here. How long is the master course? The master course is 12 evening sessions starting at 7:30 p.m. to about 9:30 p.m. They run Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights for 4 weeks. Everything is recorded, so you get access to all the recordings. Then we do 4 live tape reading sessions. So you're watching Lucci's screen as he's trading live, reading tape live. So you get to see exactly what he's doing. Then you get Ronchero's classes as well, which are 2 evening sessions. So it usually runs about 6 weeks in terms of all the live classes, but you also get access to all future live sessions. So people just keep coming back over and over and over. Once you sign up, once you remember, you can keep coming back. We hold live sessions about once a quarter, I would say. We're at that clip right now. This is a really good question that I saw. Okay, Paul Churchill. Being a West Coaster, as you were building your account back up while you were still learning, improving your game, how do you balance that grind with still working and having your mind in both? Speaking of double resistance.
It was very, very difficult. There was no easy answer to it, and I had to be a very patient individual, and I could not just put aside my day job. But what I was able to do was I was able to trade in the mornings before I went to work. And I just basically had alerts that were set, and they would text my phone. And if I reached a certain level on whatever it was that I was watching, so for example, I was using my strategy, which is trading the post, the long-term strategy, and writing against. And what I would do is I would write longer, I would write further out, and I would set an alert. And if something got close to the price where I needed to cover, I would at least get a text message or an email message, and it would say, hey, X, Y, and Z is trading at this price. And that would give me the opportunity to take a break from what I was doing and go and take a look and check and keep an eye on it that way. So I could not be as aggressive as I wanted to be. I had to take a more conservative approach while doing that. But what it did was it allowed me to have less stress during the course of the day because I was being more conservative in the approach that I was taking. But yeah, it's not easy to trade and to have a full-time job. It is challenging. There is no easy way around that.
Good. Okay, let's see what else we got. I think we got time for one more. Michael, you're asking questions about tape on options versus level 2. I don't think we have time to really get in for that. That can go way too deep. Let's see. Do you feel like your trading style is more conservative being older, or do you still take risks like someone who is young?
So, yeah, that is. I have I keep two separate accounts. One account is specifically for my longer dated strategy. And within that longer dated strategy, when I'm trading shorter term against those longs, it's only on those stocks and it's only in that account. And when I'm scalping, the scalping is a completely separate account and is a completely separate mindset. So it can be confusing, I think, for a lot of guys because I'll bounce between rooms and you'll see me like today I was trading, I traded Boeing, I traded Biogen, I traded Apple. I traded a bunch of things that I did not trade in my long-term account. And if you don't know that I've got two separate accounts and two separate mindsets going, it can be confusing. So to answer the question, one side is conservative. I have one mindset. The other side is scalp. So they're two separate things.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Well, I think that we can basically wrap it up for this time. Thursday, like I said, we'll be back here with Chris Caddy. We'll be going real in-depth into more of the tactical side of things of how you can actively reframe your perspective, kind of overcome a lot of the sources of resistance that we see sabotage traders out there. So check that out. Meet us, come back here on Thursday after the close. If you want access to Ronch, if you want to learn directly from this guy, definitely suggest that you check out the master course, the Lucci master course, and you can learn more about that if you go to 3ltplaybook.com, go through that pretty cool online experience that we created and get to the end of that. So thank you all for being here. Ronch, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your
Thanks,
story.
Charlie. And thanks, guys.
Yeah, the knowledge that you can drop on everybody. So we will see you guys on Thursday.